Hello, and welcome back to Apaka Podcast. Today we have a special treat. I am talking with one of my players. This is Jeremy. He's going to be playing Relic on the podcast with us. Jeremy, do you want to tell us anything about Relic right now, or do you want to save that in your back pocket for the future?
I don't know. What have you talked about so far?
So currently, I've gone over the different regions that we have. So there's 5 podcasts up plus kind of like an introductory podcast. And so I go over the desert, the radioactive north, the east, the west, the south. But I don't think the players have really heard much about the past.
Okay.
And so really there's just kind of this little kind of teaser right in the very beginning that's like, Kita was super advanced, and then the world ended.
Gotcha. Little vague. Perfect. I like vaguity. That's a word, right?
Yeah, sure. We'll go with that.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I guess probably hold most of it for later, because honestly, there's a lot I'm figuring out still. But basically, yeah, he's from the past. And with that, he's gonna not remember a lot. Kind of a tech geek and a little bit spoiled because he had everything he needed, and it's going to be probably pretty rough waking up in the future and everything being not only terrible, but not having access to everything he's used to. So that'll be fun to try and roleplay, I guess. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun just thinking about this. I think episode 1 or 0, whatever it is you want to do, I think that'll probably be most of the reveal.
Yeah, I had the hardest time trying to figure out how to like put your character into the story, because the other 2 characters are very much like they grew up in this post-apocalyptic world. And so like if I wanted to, you could do like that classic RPG, like, oh, and you meet in a tavern and there's this dude there who's pretty cool, and now you're in an adventuring party. But with Relic being from the past, I was like, I don't know how to make this happen. And I don't really just want to be like, he woke up and then he walked around for a while and then he met these people, because that seemed really boring. So I was like, okay, we're going to hit this so hard in episode 1. It's just Relic's going to have a real hard time adjusting to the future. Spoiler alert.
That'll be good. I like being surprised too.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. But anyway, so the real reason we're meeting today is you pretty much spearheaded the idea behind making an actual map for Kita based on the lore drops that I've been putting out there. So let's see here. Did I share with you the because we had an issue. We had a nice map that looked like a American eagle flexing with Captain America's shield.
Yep.
And then we lost access to that. Did I share with you the I tried fiddling with the map program.
Yeah.
I think I have it up.
Yeah, you sent me the file on like Dropbox or something, or Drive. I don't remember. I remember opening it and looking at it.
So let me pull that up. Okay, and let's share this screen. Maybe. That's a whiteboard. Not helpful.
Just try. Sketch it real quick.
Yeah, there we go. So what is this? The Azgaar Fantasy Map Generator,
yes.
Right?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, I looked for a bunch of there's quite a few free ones and quite a few more paid ones, but I feel like this one was kind of the best overall just because I had all the layers of detail if you wanted, as I'm sure you've now figured out.
There are way too many switches and knobs for my simple brain.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
I spent spent a couple hours trying to get this to work.
Oh man.
But I think this is part of it is I started with like a vision for this continent that was more or less driven by, I think this would be cool, so we're just going to make that happen. And after we had brainstormed a little bit about it, I was like, okay, well, how do I make this more realistic? And when you showed me this map generator and how it can kind of do like weather and biomes and things like that, just like automatically generated from the weather wind patterns, I was like, okay, let me see if any of the science I have in my head actually works. And so it took a while, but I think this looks like what I think I had pictured in my head. I don't know what you were thinking, but we kind of have this central desert in here, and then over to the west which I always confuse my wests and my easts, but over to the west we have the mountain range, and then far west we have this almost like tropical jungle going on that nobody really knows about.
Secret.
Yeah, that I've put a lot of secrets in here.
Yeah,
I feel like I need to put something that's a little bit more obvious.
I also like the bottom left there, kind of it looks like a crater impact or something.
There's nothing to see down here, don't you worry.
Not anymore.
Yeah, that was definitely like a crater or something.
Nice.
And so I think for me, what I would like to hand off to you, if you're up to it, is I basically went in with the flat elevation tool, and I just made like almost like a tiered structure.
Oh, okay.
So like the desert would be like ground floor, and then this savanna-y light green would be like the first floor, and then these darker taiga areas are like level 2.
Okay.
And then mountains are like the mountains are like infinitely tall because I'm like, I just want to block wind.
When I saw that wall of white, I was like, oh man, those are real tall.
And so I got very frustrated fighting with this to finally get it to work. So if you were up to it, I'd probably hand this off to you to like smooth it out and make it a little bit more like, no, this is actually what a mountain should look like. It's not like a infinitely tall plateau. It's got
just cut off
grooves and yeah. But mostly I was playing with it to convince myself that like the weather I had invented was not terribly inaccurate.
Yeah, completely implausible.
Yeah, that was my big concern. Is I'd put this out there and people would be like, "That's not how weather works, Eric.
Yeah, I feel
you
like
can't do that."
I don't know how your brain works, but mine's like I just need a level of realism. You know, it's like if I think about it for 5 seconds and it works, I'm happy with it. You know, if it stands up to that kind of scrutiny, I'm not thinking like, oh, this has to be hyper realistic. It's just too much work for everyone.
Yeah, and I think that's the fun of science fiction is you can get to that edge where it's like if it's at least slightly believable, it's like, and then the rest is fun science we haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
Or this is a fantasy planet that has different physics from ours, but as a physicist, that hurts my brain.
Yeah,
so
the hand waving.
I have to have it at least slightly grounded into our reality.
Yes, and as not a physicist, my brain also tends to work like that. It just wants reasons, even if they're bad.
So what do you think? This was my attempt at a map. Do you have any questions or comments or?
I mean, like, I guess if you're handing it off to me, I would just give it more shape. I think would be the only, make it a little more fun, I guess. Yeah. But as far as like regions go, I don't want to mess with those, obviously, because you probably have ideas and plans for all of them. So I wouldn't do much with that. So, actually, yeah. Here's a question for you. So, I see all the rivers in the central area going to like a lake. Is that Salt Lake?
So that's Azgaar doing its Azgaar thing, where it auto generates rivers and things like that, and it needed to do something. None of these rivers are really things that I put in there. I think on the far west that you can see there's like some big rivers and things like that, which I think are really cool and very in line with my understanding of the continent. But I kind of want, I don't know if this is possible, but I feel like I don't really want any water in the desert, but I don't know if that's really realistic.
I think if I remember correctly, you can highlight them and delete them. I could do that too. I could just dry them up. Just leave one death lake in the middle.
Yeah, and I feel like part of the problem is because I did like this plateau style of design, the map's like, we got to put water somewhere. Water goes downhill.
It will collect.
Yeah. So like, I don't mind if there's like a larger river, but like you said, maybe it's dead or it has a salt, or if the river comes from the radioactive north, I think that's a perfectly acceptable reason to not drink the water.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's a good idea.
So I wouldn't necessarily be against that.
Okay.
What is interesting, and I'll say that I didn't really understand it until I spoke with you and actually played with this map generator, but this upper northwest taiga region here, that is actually basically a plateau.
Okay.
Because we had been talking about, what, Colorado?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's very much like Colorado. It's just kind of this large, I don't want to call it flat, but it's this high elevation. So you basically have mountain, which is really high, and then you have this higher elevation kind of plateau area, and then it steps down again. And that kind of extends the mountain range to keep the moisture out of the desert. And that was like a key feature in actually getting these biomes to match what I had in my head.
Gotcha.
And I kind of pictured, I think, so like this mountain range basically represents a like a tectonic plate.
Yep.
Yeah, so this mountain range basically represents like a fault line. And in my head, there's like one plate coming from west to east, and then at least one, maybe two, coming from east to west.
Okay.
And so this upper plateau area, I kind of envision it as almost like rolling hills in a sense.
Okay.
So it's like elevated, but also kind of like wrinkly, like you're
yeah.
compressing a sheet of paper. I don't know if that's really necessary, but that's what I see in my head.
Yeah, that would make sense. Like three plates coming together. Could have one coming from the north, even kind of pushing down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I
think this bottom edge. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I for the audience, like I remember when I moved to Colorado, and I was very confused about the tree lines and how all that worked, and how it's like, it's the middle of the country here, and the real world. It's high desert, even though it's 5,000. Denver's at like 5,000 feet, 6,000 feet, something like that. And it's weird because it's all high desert, but then you go higher, which you would think would be less likely to have foliage and trees and stuff. But then at like 8,000 feet, all of a sudden trees and greenery appears. It's really weird. And then everything disappears completely at like 12,000 feet or something like that. It's weird. There's that band of like moisture and life, and then everything above and below is just dry and dead. It's just, it was strange and not really intuitive.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, and it was a key feature in making this work. So I thank you for your life experience.
So the lighter green area, is that kind of like savanna, or is that kind of TBD? I'm just asking because thinking somewhat logically, like, okay, if we want people to congregate and live in the desert, why? So
the darkness of the green is more or less how rich in plant life it is. So if we start over on the west, we've kind of got this, I don't even know what to call that. It's almost like a neon green.
Yeah.
It's different from the rest of it, but that's kind of like your heavy rainfall jungles because of this mountain range. And then if we go to the north, we've got this dark green band. And so for the northwest, I saw that as like mature forests.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that while this is, nice, moisture-rich, fertile land where you'd think, oh, this would be great to live, it's, filled with deadly animals.
Right, yeah.
And one of the questions I think that's going to permeate all of season 1 is why is everything so deadly? Like we get that there's competition and things, but if you think about our own world, like the cow isn't out to kill us.
Yeah.
The chickens aren't out to kill us. Like why is everything on this planet suddenly so very dangerous? So that all of the regions that are kind of like this dark green, well, I shouldn't say all of them, but the northeast, you've got deadly, it's mostly insects, I'm going to say.
Okay.
Bug life kind of things, larger creepy crawlies.
Nice.
I'm trying to figure out how many spoilers to drop, if any.
I know, I'm imagining this as like Australia in the future. Things have just adapted to be even more deadly than they already are.
Yes.
And big. Hopefully big. I don't know. I don't know how big these things are.
Okay. I'm gonna share one. That's what I'll do. I'll share one spoiler. So there are these creatures called beagles.
Sounds cute.
They sound really cute. Except they're bat-eagle hybrids.
Oh.
and so one of the things you'll have to listen for is like the flapping of bat wings followed by an eagle screech.
Oh man.
And obviously they're vampire bats. I mean, because what other kind of bats would they be?
Right.
But they're like the size of eagles, and so I don't know if you've ever seen like a bald eagle or anything like that.
Yes,
They're massive creatures.
Always bigger than you think. They don't look that big on TV.
No, you see them in real life, and it's like, oh, that's a very large creature. And so you have this massive bat with eagle talons and fangs.
Oh gosh.
It's kind of terrifying. Okay, so that's one of the creatures that lives in that northwest region, among with other. I'm terrible. You'll find out that my names for things are awful, and I love it.
In the best way.
Yes, in the best way. I'm gonna commit. I'll commit to another spoiler here. We'll work our way across the north. So we have the northwest, which is basically a mature forest.
Now, is that kind of the Huntsman area?
Yes.
Okay.
So the huntsman will be in this northwest forest. And if you work your way down to your original question about the green, this lighter green region that kind of encompasses the desert, that's really kind of like plains, savannas, rolling hills. It's like a stand-in for things it's not a forest and it's not a desert.
Okay.
And so for the northwest, it's like rolling hills, I guess, with maybe small trees. And then as you move south, but still kind of border the mountain range, you can see there's still moisture. And that I wouldn't mind kind of extending this forest down more.
Okay.
The idea being that ice and runoff from the mountains are going to create like springs and things like that. And so I kind of see this whole, everything that borders up to the mountain range is probably going to be just an extension of this forest.
And I think you can do that manually too if you had to. Like if the auto generating stuff isn't working right, you could just manhandle it, I guess.
I'm totally fine with that. It was mostly just I wanted to use this software to kind of like double check my logic.
Yeah.
And we can fine tune things from there. Like you said, it's just got to be good enough that it's believable. So I kind of see this as like, you can just take this forest and extend it down now that I've convinced myself that it's a real thing and not terrible science. And then we can probably push up like the desert so that this green band kind of here doesn't go or isn't quite as big.
Yeah, okay.
Because this whole north region here, this is not forest. Like this map is showing this whole top region as like taiga or dense forest,
okay.
And that's not what's going to be there. That's going to be sprawling metropolitan type cities and things like that. And so I'm sure some of the plant life has come back, but there's so much radioactivity in there. This is my free-for-all zone.
Okay.
Where like if I want to throw a giant shambling mound at you, yeah, sure. It's full of radioactivity. I don't have to justify any reason why that dumpster stands up and tries to eat you. Radioactivity.
Everything's possible. Yeah. That's how radiation works.
Yeah, there's no rules. There are no rules up there. I'm going to try and keep it a little bit more consistent than that. As I said before, this is really like, this is going to be zombie apocalypse themed, horror setting kind of thing.
Awesome.
And so there's almost like a story, like a choose your own adventure story thing here. If you sit in the middle of the desert, that's going to be like your Mad Max, motorcycles and gangs and, people strapping two pieces of sheet metal together to make a glider that somehow magically defies physics. And if you go north, you get your zombie apocalypse adventure. If you go to the west, it's going to be more of like if you had done like Horizon Zero Dawn or something like that, where you have civilization has collapsed and now there's this giant forest with creatures in there that may or may not have technology at some point in the future. Gosh, so many spoilers.
I know. Yeah, they're just hints though, they're not spoilers.
Yeah, you're right.
Just putting the bait out there.
Yeah. And then the southern edge, this is probably the most realistic. Like, it's a savanna-y, grasslandy plateau.
Okay.
And then this is where the adventure is going to start, actually. Oh, okay. It's going to start here in the southern edge.
Nice.
This is where Relic enters the world and gets to deal with the wonderful little scorpions that live down here. I shouldn't say little. What did I call them in the podcast drop? I said minivan size.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and I'm not going to spoil that because I'm really excited for that first drop. So they have special properties, but they're secret besides being large. And then in the right-hand side, we got to figure out some choke points in here.
Yeah, I think originally what I had was basically a desert going all the way to the east, and then a mountain range on the east. And so the desert kind of going all the way up to the mountains, and then on the far side of the mountains, just like a very small habitable area. But then the smaller mountain range also acted as just like a deterrent for people crossing.
Yeah. So this kind of like darker gray area, I think. I think we could do, like, we can shift this back and forth, but if we make this kind of mountainous in here, and then this top right, I mean, this doesn't need to be plateau, but I have a special plan for this top right.
Okay.
This is, again, going to be plain Savannah-y, if we could. I'll put it out there. That's the mole people. They live up there. Yeah, they live under the savannah.
Nice.
And so there's all this radioactivity here in the north, and so the wind grabs that radioactivity and pulls it over. So you can't live on the surface up here. So you got to live underground. Right? It makes sense scientifically.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I was actually wondering about that.
And then there are animals up here. We talked about having larger mammals.
Okay.
That's where the Chickaphants live.
Chickaphants, okay.
Yeah, what do you think that is?
Chicken elephant?
Yes. Half chicken, half elephant, 100% stupid.
Nice.
I love them so much.
I'm really curious about which parts are the 50% of adding things up into a whole.
Yeah. It's, one day I'll put art up of what they actually look like. Oh. You actually had one in your, I checked your AI generated art folder. Gosh, I have to go back and look what it is. It was too scary. It was too radioactive northy.
Oh, okay.
It was like, what's it called? Those plague masks.
Oh, yeah.
Like it looked like a chicken that was about the size of a water buffalo or an elephant.
Okay.
It's hard to tell scale in the image, but it had like this plague mask head with like no eyeballs.
Oh, I think I kind of remember that one.
It was terrifying, and I was like, if that wasn't so scary, it would be a Chickaphant.
Yeah, that particular AI thing, I mean, obviously I haven't used it in a little while, and it gets better like every day, which is crazy, but it never did details great, so it always, like, animals especially would just come out super weird. So I'm like, well, I guess that's just another radioactive one. Like, they're all radioactive because none of them look like animals.
Yeah.
Unless you squint.
Yeah, so... yeah. It's so interesting because I looked at that. It's the case for like all of the art is like if you glance at it, it's like, wow, this is so impressive. Especially like the cities, they're like these sprawling cityscapes. But then if you try to like focus your eyes on a detail, it's like,
yeah, you're like, what is that?
I can't.
That's not a thing.
This is just noise.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird. It's kind of impressive and weird at the same time.
So I had a plan for this kind of northeast. But it doesn't need to be big. I just need to be able to put my mole people up there. And then I had a plan for this kind of southeast, but honestly, it doesn't matter.
Well, that's the fun thing about
I
this
could put them anywhere.
Program is like, even if you change your mind, we can just change the map, right? Retroactively, and people can just deal with it.
No, in my head, everything is up for debate and flexible change until it enters the actual adventure.
Right.
So the desert could look like, a giant pretzel, but when you go there and explore it, it's set in stone. That's what it looks like now. So everything else is flexible and subject to change.
I wish there was like a way to do kind of like a fog of war, so you could just basically not even have it until we went there, and then you could even, new map update, like here's a new region, something like that, but I don't know how you could do that. Also, there's 3 minutes left.
All right, I'm going to stop recording, and then I'll just give you a call. We can wrap up. Okay, so that was our session where I got to speak with one of my players, Jeremy, who again will be playing Relic, who is from the past. So he is my de facto expert on all things ancient. So I kind of go back to him for all sorts of lore involving that. If you want access to concept art, such as the continent map, then follow me on Instagram or Twitter at the ABCGM. Thank you guys for listening. This is the ABC Game Master signing off. I'll see you next time.